Ilara's breath came out in white clouds as she pulled her woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders. The wind howled like a living thing, bending the trees and sending snowflakes stinging her cheeks. She had lived on the edge of the village for years, in the old stone cottage her parents had left behind. It was quiet, too quiet, and the forest behind her home seemed alive with whispers she could never fully understand. That night, the snow fell harder than she had ever seen. It piled against her windows and the world outside disappeared under a thick white blanket. Ilara sat by the fire, her hands wrapped around a mug of steaming tea, listening to the storm's fury. There was something beautiful in the silence of her solitude, but it was always fragile, as if the wind could carry it away in a single gust. Then came the scratching. Soft at first, like a paw against the wooden door, almost timid. Ilara froze. No one came to this cottage, not in winter, not with the forest so wild. She leaned closer to the window, peering through the frost. Shadows moved in the snowstorm. 3 shapes crouched near the edge of the clearing. Wolves, she thought. Big silver-eyed wolves, their fur shimmering in the moonlight. She hesitated, her heart racing. Wolves were dangerous, especially in winter. But there was something pleading in their stance, something almost human in the way they watched her, their eyes glinting with intelligence. Her fingers trembled as she approached the door. A voice inside her whispered that she could not leave them out in the storm. She opened the door. The cold rushed in first, biting at her cheeks and nose. And then the wolves stepped forward, not with teeth bared, not with growls, but with a strange, cautious grace. Snow clung to their fur and their eyes held something that made Ilara's chest tighten. She took an instinctive step back. Before she could speak, the largest of the 3 began to shift. Bones cracked softly, fur melting into skin. And in moments that felt like magic, a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall, strong, with hair as dark as the night and eyes that glimmered like amber. He wore a long coat made from the hide of some ancient creature, and his gaze was steady, almost demanding. "You," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling. You're not wolves?" The man inclined his head slightly. "We are more than wolves," he said, "and we are in need of shelter." The second wolf shifted next, smaller than the first, his movements quicker, more agile. His eyes were green, bright and searching, and when he stepped forward, his lips curved in a faint, wry smile. "She has opened the door. A rare kindness," he murmured. The third was the youngest, slight and almost fragile-looking, his blue-gray eyes wide as he scanned her cottage. Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying a musical quality that made Ilara's heart ache in ways she could not explain. 3 men, but there was something in them that was not fully human. A tension in their muscles, a wildness in their eyes, a quiet storm beneath their calm. They moved as one, and yet each was distinct, each carrying a weight Ilara could feel without understanding. "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. "Please, you can stay by the fire." The eldest man nodded but did not sit. He remained near the doorway, his eyes scanning the forest outside. "We are not here for warmth alone," he said quietly, almost to himself. "We are bound to this place, bound by a curse that has lasted far too long." Ilara froze. A curse? Her voice was barely audible. She had heard old village stories, whispered tales of witches and spirits that lingered in the forests at night. But these men, these wolves felt real. Terribly real. The man she assumed was the eldest, Kale, though she did not yet know his name, took a step closer. "Long ago, a witch cursed our family. We were trapped in the forms you saw outside, forced to wander the forest through centuries of winter. Only a human with a pure heart can help us regain our true selves." Ilara blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You want me to help you?" "Yes," he said simply. His voice held an authority that made her feel both afraid and drawn to him. "But it is not a simple task. The curse is old and the forest is alive with its shadows. Many have tried. Many have failed." The second man, Riven, though she did not know his name, stepped forward, his green eyes bright. "We do not mean to frighten you. You have a choice. But the storm is not only outside. The magic that binds us reacts to the cold, to the fear, to your kindness. The longer you hesitate, the greater the risk for all of us." Ilara's fingers tightened around the shawl draped over her shoulders. She felt a pull she could not name, a strange mixture of fear and longing. Something in their presence called to her, as if threads from her own past had reached out across time to meet them. The youngest, Lior, remained close to the fire, his eyes wide and hesitant. Please, he whispered. We only want safety. We only want home. The word echoed in Ilara's mind. Home. She had lost her family in the winter plague years ago. She had lived alone ever since, surviving by herself, trusting no one. Yet the longing in that word, so simple, so human, stirred something deep inside her. You can stay, she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. But you must promise me, you will not harm anyone here. Cale's eyes softened just slightly. We would not dream of harming you, he said. Not now. Not ever. Riven leaned back against the wall, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for centuries. Then let the night begin, he said. We will tell you our story if you will listen. And so Ilara sat by the fire, listening as the wind howled outside and the snow piled higher against the windows. The brothers spoke of forests that stretched beyond the horizon, of battles fought under moonlight, of a curse that had stolen their lives again and again. They spoke of loyalty and betrayal, of fear and sorrow, and in every word, Ilara felt the weight of their centuries-long suffering. She asked questions, timidly at first, then with more courage as the hours passed. Cale's voice was steady and commanding, Riven's sharp and thoughtful, Lior's soft and full of wonder. Together they formed a tapestry of experience and pain, longing and hope. And in the quiet moments between their stories, Ilara could feel their eyes on her, not with hunger, not with malice, but with something deeper. Something that made her heartbeat quicken and her breath catch in her throat. Then a sudden crack of ice against the roof startled them all. The wind screamed louder. The shadows in the corners of the cottage twisted. Ilara shivered. Something was out there. Something old. Something dangerous. Cale rose immediately, his body moving with an instinctive grace that made Ilara gasp. He peered out the window, his jaw tight, eyes narrowing. It knows we are here, he said in a low, urgent voice. It has come for us. Riven moved to the window as well, his expression hardening. The witch, he said simply. She has returned. We thought we had more time. Lior pressed close to Ilara, his small hands gripping hers. What does she want? He asked, his voice trembling. Cale's eyes softened for just a moment, and he placed a hand on Lior's shoulder. To remind us that the past never dies, he said, and to test whether we are ready to reclaim our lives. Ilara's chest tightened. Fear and fascination wove together, making her pulse quicken. These men, these creatures, carried centuries of pain and hope, and now their fate, and perhaps hers, hung in the balance. The wind howled again, and snow began to batter the cottage as if the forest itself were alive, pressing in on every side. Cale's eyes met hers, steady and unyielding. You will need courage, he said quietly. More than you have ever known. But if you are willing, you may save more than us, you may save yourself as well. Ilara swallowed hard. The fire crackled, the storm raged, and the three brothers waited, shadows of wolves and men intertwined in the flickering light. She realized in that moment that nothing in her life had prepared her for this night, for these creatures, for the storm that had brought them together. I will help you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper but resolute. Tell me what I must do. Kyle nodded once sharply, and Riven allowed a small, relieved smile to cross his face. Lior's eyes shone with hope, and for the first time since the storm began, Ilara felt a fragile warmth spreading through her chest. Outside, the wind screamed, and through the snow, the distant howl of a wolf, or perhaps something else, echoed across the frozen forest. Ilara did not flinch. She had opened her door to the unknown, and now the unknown had entered her home. The night had only just begun. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the cottage walls. Outside, the storm raged on, snow and wind pressing against the windows as though the forest itself were alive and hungry. Ilara sat close to the fire, her hands wrapped around the warmth of her mug, while the three brothers, Cale, Riven, and Lior, stood nearby, their eyes occasionally glancing at the darkened windows. Kyle's presence filled the room with an almost unbearable tension. He leaned against the doorway, his sharp amber eyes scanning the forest, every muscle coiled like a predator ready to strike. Yet when he looked at Ilara, there was a flicker of something softer, something that made her stomach tighten. He was cautious, commanding, but beneath that steel-like exterior, she sensed a deep loneliness, a pain that had lasted centuries. Riven paced along the walls, his green eyes thoughtful as he traced patterns in the frost on the window panes. The witch's return is not random, he said quietly. She has been watching us, waiting for the moment we became vulnerable. And now? His voice trailed off as he shook his head. Now she knows she can reach us through you. Elara frowned. Through me? How? I'm just human. You are more than that, Kale interrupted, his voice low and steady, carrying authority that made her still. You carry a strength she cannot measure. That is why she will try to use fear, to test you. But fear alone will not sway you if your heart is true. Lior, the youngest, sat closer to the fire, his blue-gray eyes wide as he spoke. I've never met anyone like her, he said softly. She doesn't even know it, but she has a courage that makes the wind feel weak. Elara blushed, not sure whether to feel pride or embarrassment. Her gaze fell on Lior for a moment, and she saw in him something fragile, a piece of himself that had not been touched by centuries of pain. She wanted to protect him, to keep him safe from the curse and from the witch's reach. The room was quiet for a moment, filled only with the soft crackling of the fire. Then Kale moved toward her, each step deliberate, careful. He stopped a few feet away and lowered his voice, almost a whisper. You need to understand the curse fully before you can help us. It is tied not only to our forms, but to our hearts, to the choices we made long ago. It is a burden that has shaped us, and it will test you as much as it tests us. Elara swallowed hard. I don't know if I can do it. I've never dealt with magic, curses, or anything like this. Riven stopped pacing and gave her a small, reassuring smile. You can. Because you already have. You opened your door to us in a storm when most humans would have run. That is the beginning. Everything else is only learning. Lior nodded, his voice quiet but insistent. And we will be with you. Every step. You are not alone. For the first time since the night began, Elara felt a strange warmth, a spark of hope. Even with the storm outside and the curse looming over them, she was not alone. And in that moment, the fear that had clutched her heart loosened slightly, replaced by a strange, unexplainable connection to the three brothers. Kale's amber eyes softened as he studied her face. There is more you should know, he said, stepping closer. The forest is alive. It responds to our presence, to the curse, and now to you. Its shadows can deceive, its whispers can confuse. You must trust yourself, and you must trust us. Elara nodded, feeling a shiver run down her spine. The shadows in the corners of the cottage seemed to twist and stretch, responding to Kale's words as though the room itself were listening. She had always known the forest was not ordinary, but now she understood that it was more than alive. It was aware, and it was watching them. Riven sighed and sat on the edge of a chair, resting his elbows on his knees. I'll tell you what happened to us, he said. It began centuries ago, in a time before your people even settled in this region. Our family was cursed by a witch whose love was betrayed. Our ancestor. He made choices that broke her heart, and in her grief and anger she bound us all. We were turned into wolves, creatures of the forest, forced to roam through endless winters, never aging, never dying, but never free. Elara listened, her heart tightening. She could see the weight of that history in their eyes, the pain, the regret, the longing to reclaim something lost long ago. And she understood somehow that this curse was not just about magic. It was about love, betrayal, and the echoes of choices made generations before her. Kale's voice, low and steady, broke the silence. And now she has returned. The witch, she knows you exist, and she will try to bend the world to her will to stop us. But there is a way to end the curse, though it will not be easy. You must help us confront the shadows of our past, and you must have faith that your heart is strong enough to guide us. Elara swallowed, her hands tightening around her mug. And if I fail? She asked, her voice barely audible. Kale's eyes softened, and for the first time a shadow of vulnerability touched his features. Then we remain lost, he said simply. And the forest. The witch. They do not forgive easily. Lior stepped closer, placing a hand over hers. We believe in you, he said softly. Even if you doubt yourself, we do not. We have waited so long for someone like you. Her chest tightened at his words. She did not fully understand why, but she felt a deep, stirring sense of responsibility. Somehow she had been chosen. Somehow her heart mattered more than she had ever realized. Hours passed as the storm raged on outside. The brothers shared fragments of their lives, of the centuries spent in wolf form, of the pain of watching the world change while they remained the same. Elara listened, asking questions, learning, and slowly forming a bond with them. She could feel the tension in the room ease slightly, replaced by something fragile but undeniable, a trust that had begun to take root. But just as the night seemed to settle, the shadows outside the windows shifted. The wind moaned, carrying a whisper that sounded almost like laughter, cold and cruel. Ilara froze, her heart pounding. Cale's body tensed, every muscle alert. "She is here," he said in a voice low and dangerous. "The witch. She has come to remind us of the past, and to test your heart." Riven rose slowly, placing himself between the windows and Ilara. "Do not fear," he said. "Her magic is strong, but it cannot touch what is true in your heart. We will face her together." Lior's small hand found hers again, gripping it tightly. "We will not let her harm you," he whispered. The shadows seemed to grow darker, the wind screaming louder, and Ilara realized with a shiver that the witch's presence was more than a threat. It was a force that bent the very forest to her will. Trees leaned toward the cottage. Snow swirled like living blades, and the very air felt thick with ancient magic. Kyle's amber eyes met hers, steady and unwavering despite the storm. "You must be ready," he said quietly. "The path ahead will demand courage, strength, and a heart unbroken by fear. But if you are willing, you may save more than us. You may save yourself." Ilara nodded, though her chest ached with the weight of what she had agreed to. She did not yet understand how she would help them, or what dangers awaited beyond the walls of her cottage, but she knew one thing clearly. She could not turn away now. Outside, the storm roared, the howl of a wolf or perhaps something else pierced the night. The brothers' forms shifted subtly, muscles tensing, eyes glowing faintly as they listened to the call. Ilara felt her pulse quicken. The forest was alive, the witch was near, and her life had changed forever. For the first time she understood that the storm was not only outside, it was inside her as well. Fear and hope intertwined, forming a delicate thread that bound her to the three brothers. And as she looked at Cale, Riven, and Lior, she realized that her heart had already begun to answer the call of the cursed forest, even if she did not fully understand it yet. The night stretched on, long and unyielding. Shadows danced in the corners, the fire crackled, and the three brothers waited, tense and watchful, while Ilara sat between them, heart pounding. Outside, the storm was relentless. Inside, a fragile bond was forming, one that would be tested by magic, by danger, and by the power of the witch who had cursed them all. And somewhere in the howling wind, a voice whispered, a promise or a threat she could not tell. "The night is only beginning. Choose wisely or all will be lost." The storm outside showed no sign of slowing. Snow pounded against the windows like icy fists, and the trees bent under the relentless wind. Inside the cottage, the fire struggled against the cold, its flames flickering and casting dancing shadows across the walls. Ilara wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, glancing nervously at the three brothers. Kyle stood near the doorway, alert and rigid, his amber eyes scanning the forest through the frost-streaked window. Every now and then he shifted slightly, muscles tense as though ready to strike at a shadow only he could see. Riven paced along the walls, hands clenched, his green eyes narrowed as he studied the darkness outside. Lior remained closest to Ilara, his small hands resting lightly on her arm, seeking comfort but also offering it. A sudden gust rattled the windows, and the shadows outside seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. Ilara froze, sensing the presence before she could see it. The witch had arrived. Cale's voice was low, a dangerous growl under calm words. "She is close. Her magic seeps into the air, thick and cold. She will test you, Ilara. Do not let fear control your heart." Ilara swallowed, feeling her throat tighten.
"Test me?"
she whispered. Riven stopped pacing and looked at her with a serious expression. "The witch thrives on doubt and fear. She will try to make you question everything, the brothers, yourself, even your choices. You must remember why you are here. You chose to help them. That is your strength." Lior's voice, soft but determined, broke through the tension. "And we will stand by you. No matter what she tries, we face it together." The shadows in the forest shifted again, darker this time, moving closer to the cottage. The wind carried a whisper that made the hair on Ilara's arms rise. It was a voice like ice over stone, low and cruel, carrying centuries of anger and sorrow. "You dare to interfere?" the voice hissed. "You dare to touch what belongs to me?" Ilara stepped back, but Cale moved in front of her, his presence protective and commanding. "We do not fear you," he said. "Your curse has lasted too long. It ends tonight. There was a ripple in the shadows, and the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Frost formed on the window panes in intricate patterns, as if the forest itself were answering the witch's call. Riven and Leor tensed, their bodies glowing faintly with the energy of their wolf forms, though they remained human. The witch's voice flowed into the room, soft and melodic but carrying an edge that made Alara's blood run cold. "Do you think a human heart can undo centuries of pain?" she whispered. "Do you think love or loyalty can overcome what I have created?" Alara's hand shook. She had always believed in kindness and courage, but now, faced with a force older than anything she had known, fear clawed at her. She looked at Cale, who met her gaze steadily, his amber eyes burning with resolve. In that moment she realized that courage was not the absence of fear. It was standing despite it. Cale took a step forward. "Your magic is strong, but it cannot endure the truth of our hearts. We will not be broken by illusions nor by shadows. We face you together." The room grew colder still, and snow began drifting in through cracks in the doorframe. Ilara's breath came out in white clouds mingling with the firelight. She felt a strange energy wrap around her chest, a pull toward the brothers, toward their suffering and their courage. The witch's voice rose, now almost laughing, cruel and cold. "Then see if your bonds are strong enough. Watch as I show you the weight of your choices, the sorrow you cannot undo." Suddenly, the shadows in the corners of the room stretched into shapes, ghostly echoes of the brothers' past. Cale's father, fierce and proud, appeared as a spectral figure, pointing an accusing finger. Riven's younger self, trapped in wolf form, howled in despair. Leor's laughter, once pure and bright, twisted into a mocking echo that filled the room. Alara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Stop, please," she whispered. She wanted to close her eyes to hide, but she could not. The brothers needed her. She had promised to help them, and she would not turn away now. Cale's voice was calm, almost soothing, cutting through the illusions. "These are only shadows. They are memories, not truth. They are pain you carry, not the burden of this moment. Face them, Alara, face them with me." Riven's green eyes met hers. "Focus on what is real, on the bond we share, on what you have chosen. The rest is only noise." The illusions twisted again, forming darker, more frightening shapes. The spectral figures lunged at the brothers, forcing them to shift slightly, their wolf instincts surfacing. Cale's teeth bared for a moment, though his body remained mostly human. Riven's eyes flashed with green fire, and Leor trembled as he pressed closer to Alara, seeking her strength as she sought his. Alara's heart pounded, but she drew in a deep breath. She remembered the promise she had made, to help them, to stand with them. She stepped closer to the brothers, placing a hand on Cale's arm. "I am here," she said firmly. "I am not afraid. Not of you, not of them, not of the curse." Cale's amber eyes softened slightly at her words, and he nodded. Riven's jaw relaxed, and Leor exhaled a shaky breath. The illusions wavered, losing their sharpness, their menace. The witch's laughter cut through the moment, sharp and furious. "Foolish human. You think your courage matters? You think you can defy me?" Alara lifted her chin, her voice steady. "Courage is not about never being afraid. It is about standing when fear tries to stop you. We will not let you control us. We will face the past and reclaim our lives." The shadows hesitated, and then the forest outside seemed to pulse in response, the storm's fury momentarily pausing as if listening. The witch's voice grew cold, almost whispering now. "Very well. Face the truth and see if your heart can endure it." Suddenly the illusions transformed. The cottage walls seemed to stretch and bend, revealing visions of the brothers' past. Battles fought under moonlight, moments of betrayal and loss, decisions that had led to their centuries of suffering. Cale's father had turned against him, Riven had been forced to choose between family and freedom, and Leor had been abandoned in a snowstorm, left to howl alone. Alara's chest tightened. She could see their pain, feel it as though it were her own. Her fingers trembled, but she refused to look away. She knew now that helping them was not just about magic. It was about understanding, about holding space for centuries of sorrow and guiding them toward redemption. Cale's hand brushed hers, a grounding touch. "Do not let the shadows scare you," he said quietly. "They are only memories. We are still here. We are alive. And we have you." Riven's voice joined softly. "Let the past be what it is. You cannot change it, but you can face it, and that is enough." Leor squeezed her hand, his small warmth a comfort against the cold. We will get through this, together. Alara drew in a deep breath, feeling her resolve solidify. The visions around them trembled and flickered, losing their intensity. The witch's magic, though powerful, could not break the bond that had formed between her and the brothers. The storm outside seemed to react, the wind howling as if in anger, but the cottage remained a small island of warmth and light. Alara's courage, her willingness to face fear and stand with them, had weakened the witch's control, at least for now. Kale's amber eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "You have done more than most could," he said softly. "Your heart has guided us, and that is the first step toward ending the curse." Riven allowed a small, relieved smile. "The night is far from over," he said. "But you have proven that you are capable. That is no small thing." Lior's eyes shone with hope, and he pressed closer to her. "Thank you," he whispered. "You are braver than you know." Alara looked at them all, her chest tight with emotion. Fear still lingered, and the witch's presence had not vanished. But she felt something stronger now. A bond of trust, courage, and shared purpose. The storm outside was still fierce, but inside, she knew that together, they could face whatever came next. And as the wind howled around the cottage, carrying whispers of the witch's rage, Alara realized one thing clearly. The path ahead would be dangerous, full of tests and shadows, but she was ready. She would not turn away. Not from them, not from the curse, not from the truth that had found her in the snowstorm. The night stretched on, and in the flickering firelight, the three brothers and the human who had opened her door to them prepared for the trials yet to come. Outside the storm raged, but inside courage had found a foothold. The witch had returned, but so had hope. The snowstorm had finally eased by morning, leaving the forest outside the cottage blanketed in white. Sunlight, pale and weak, filtered through the heavy clouds, illuminating the twisted, icy trees that seemed to bend under the weight of centuries. The forest was silent, but its stillness was deceptive, almost alive, as though it was waiting for them to take the next step. Alara stood at the edge of the clearing, looking at the three brothers who had become more than strangers in a single night. Kale, tall and imposing, exuded strength and vigilance, though a hint of weariness lingered in his amber eyes. Riven's green gaze scanned the snow-covered forest, calculating every possible danger, while Lior shifted nervously, his blue-gray eyes reflecting both excitement and fear. "This forest is older than any of us," Kale said, his voice low, carrying a weight that made Alara shiver despite the cold. "Every tree, every shadow, it remembers, and it will test you as it tests us. The relic we seek lies deep within. It is the key to breaking the curse, but it is guarded by forces that do not forgive the unprepared." Alara tightened her shawl and nodded. "I am ready," she said, though her chest tightened at the thought of venturing into a forest that seemed alive with hidden eyes and whispered warnings. Lior glanced at her, his small hand brushing against hers. "You don't have to be afraid. We are together. That is what matters." Riven's sharp gaze softened for a moment. "Stay close," he said. "The witch's influence is still strong here. We do not know what illusions or traps we might encounter." The four of them moved cautiously through the snow, the crunch of their steps echoing unnaturally in the still air. The forest seemed to shift around them. Shadows stretched unnaturally, branches moved as if to block their path, and the wind carried faint whispers that sounded almost like distant voices crying out in warning. Alara felt her heart quicken, but Kale's steady presence gave her courage. She kept her eyes on him, letting the bond they had formed guide her through the fear. Every step forward was a test of will, of trust, and of heart. Hours passed, and the forest grew darker, the snow deeper and more difficult to navigate. The brothers led the way, their wolf instincts occasionally surfacing as they sniffed the air and listened to the faintest sounds. Riven's green eyes caught subtle movements, a shadow shifting, a branch breaking under weight unseen, and he guided them safely around hidden dangers. Lior's small form pressed closer to Alara's side, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're safe," she whispered, though even she did not fully believe the words. Kale's amber eyes scanned the horizon as they approached a frozen lake, its surface covered in a thick layer of ice that reflected the pale light. "The relic lies beneath that lake," he said quietly. "But it is not simply hidden. It is protected by enchantments. Only someone with a pure heart and courage can retrieve it." Alara took a deep breath. "Then I will retrieve it," If this is the way to help you, I will do it. Kyle studied her for a moment, a flicker of something unspoken in his eyes. You must trust yourself. The forest will try to deceive you, tempt you, frighten you. Do not give in. Riven stepped closer, offering a reassuring nod. We are here to guide you. But this is your path to take. Only your heart can lift the relic. Lior squeezed her hand again, his small voice carrying a warmth that made her smile despite the cold.
We believe in you. Alara nodded, her resolve strengthening.
She stepped onto the frozen lake, feeling the cold seep through her boots. The ice beneath her feet groaned, sending shivers up her spine, but she kept moving, guided by Kyle's steady voice behind her. As she reached the center, the air around her seemed to shimmer, the ice glowing faintly with a pale blue light. The relic lay beneath the surface, a crystalline object that pulsed with energy, reflecting the light like a heartbeat frozen in time. Alara felt a pull toward it, a connection she could not explain. It called to her, as if recognizing her courage and the bond she shared with the brothers. But as she reached down, the forest responded. Shadows rose from beneath the ice, dark shapes twisting and writhing, forming illusions of her deepest fears. Figures from her past appeared, her lost family, twisted and distorted, their eyes accusing, their mouths silent. The wind whispered doubts into her ears. You are not strong enough. You cannot help them. You will fail, Alara's heart pounded. Fear clawed at her, threatening to stop her. But she remembered Kale's words, Riven's guidance, Lior's trust. She closed her eyes, letting her hand hover over the relic. She focused on the bond she shared with the brothers, on the courage that had carried her this far, and on the promise she had made to help them. When she opened her eyes, the shadows faltered, their edges flickering like smoke in the wind. Alara reached down and grasped the relic. The moment her fingers touched it, a pulse of energy surged through her, warm and powerful, filling her with light that seemed to push the darkness back. The illusions dissolved, leaving her standing on the frozen lake, the relic glowing softly in her hands. Kale, Riven, and Lior stepped forward, their expressions filled with awe and relief. You did it, Kale said, his voice carrying a rare note of wonder. You have proven your courage. Your heart is true, Riven's green eyes shone. The first step is complete. The relic responds to you, Alara. That is no small thing. Lior's small hands reached for hers, and she felt the warmth of their trust and admiration. You are amazing, he whispered. Alara's chest tightened with emotion. She had faced her fear, the forest and the shadows of the witch, and she had succeeded. But she knew this was only the beginning. The curse still lingered, and the witch's power was far from broken. Kale's amber eyes met hers, holding a depth of emotion she could not fully read. There is one more thing, he said softly. The relic is not enough by itself. It will guide us, but the curse can only be broken if we confront the truth of our past, the betrayals, the mistakes, the guilt we carry. That is the true test. Alara nodded, understanding that the path ahead would not be easy. She had proven courage, but she had yet to face the deeper challenges, the emotional burdens the brothers carried, and the dark force of the witch that still lingered. As they prepared to leave the lake, a new danger emerged. The forest shifted again, the wind rising into a howl, and a figure appeared in the distance, the witch herself. Her form was barely visible through the snow, but her presence radiated power and malice. She raised her hands, and the air trembled with dark magic. You think you can succeed? Her voice hissed through the forest. The relic is meaningless. Courage alone cannot undo what has been done. You will fail, and you will all pay the price. Kyle stepped forward, placing himself between the witch and Alara. Your magic cannot control us, he said firmly. You cannot touch what is true in our hearts. We face this together, and we will not be broken. Riven and Lior flanked him, their expressions resolute. Your time is over, Riven said. We have found strength in ways you cannot destroy. The witch laughed, a sound that was both beautiful and cruel. We shall see, she said, vanishing into the swirling snow, leaving the forest heavy with silence and anticipation. Alara exhaled, her body trembling with adrenaline. She looked at the brothers, seeing the mixture of relief and lingering tension in their faces. Kale's eyes met hers, softer now, and for a brief moment the storm outside seemed to fade, leaving only the bond they shared. You were incredible, Lior whispered, his small hand brushing hers. Riven nodded, though his usual sharpness was softened by awe. You have proven yourself in ways few could. But remember, this is only part of the journey. The true test is yet to come. Kale's amber gaze lingered on Ilara, a mixture of admiration, concern, and something deeper she could not yet name. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow we move deeper into the forest. The relic will guide us, but the path is still dangerous. Be ready, Ilara. Be ready for what lies ahead. As they made their way back to the cottage, the sun dipped behind the clouds, casting the forest into long, dark shadows. Ilara felt a shiver of anticipation and fear. The witch was still out there, the curse still bound the brothers, and the path ahead promised trials she could not yet imagine. But for the first time, she also felt hope. She had faced fear, embraced courage, and proven that her heart was strong. And as she glanced at Kale walking beside her, she realized that she was not just helping the brothers. She was part of something greater, something powerful, and something that would change all their lives forever. The night was coming, and with it new challenges, but together they would face them, and perhaps, just perhaps, break the curse that had haunted the forest for centuries. The forest was silent, but the silence carried weight, thick and heavy as snow pressed down on the trees. Night had fallen, and the shadows stretched long and dark across the path. The wind whispered secrets through the branches, carrying a chill that seemed to reach into the bones. Ilara tightened her shawl, the relic warm in her hands, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Kyle, Riven, and Lior moved ahead of her, alert and tense. The brothers had grown stronger since the first night, their human forms now blended with subtle wolf-like grace. Amber, green, and blue-gray eyes reflected the pale moonlight, alert for danger in every motion, every sound. The forest seemed alive with expectation, as if it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. "The relic will guide us to the heart of the forest," Kyle said quietly, his voice steady, but carrying urgency. "There the curse originates. We must confront it directly. Only then can the witch be defeated and our forms restored." Ilara nodded, trying to steady her trembling hands. Her heart raced, fear and determination coiling tightly together. She had faced the witch's illusions before, but this final confrontation felt immense, like standing on the edge of a storm that threatened to swallow everything. Riven's green eyes scanned the shadows. "We must stay together. The witch's power is at its strongest here. She will try to turn us against each other, to make us doubt. Trust is our only shield." Lior pressed close to Ilara, small fingers brushing hers. "I trust you," he whispered. "All of you. We will be okay." The path led them deeper into the forest, where the trees grew closer and the shadows darker. The wind had fallen, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the hairs on Ilara's arm stand. The moonlight glinted on frost-covered branches, creating the illusion of eyes watching them from every direction. Finally, they reached a clearing at the center of the forest. The air was thick, charged with magic that made it difficult to breathe. At the center, a dark figure hovered, cloaked in shadows, the witch herself, her eyes glowing with a cruel light. She lifted her hands and the air seemed to shimmer, bending and twisting as though the forest obeyed her every motion. "You have come," she said, her voice both beautiful and terrifying. "But this is where your courage will fail. The relic is useless and your hearts are fragile. You cannot undo what I have bound." Kale stepped forward, his jaw set, amber eyes blazing. "You underestimate the power of trust, courage, and love. We will not be broken by your shadows. Today the curse ends." Riven and Lior flanked him, their expressions resolute. "We face this together," Riven said. "No matter what illusions you cast, we will not falter." Ilara stepped forward, the relic pulsing in her hands. She could feel the energy flowing from it, responding to her courage, guiding her toward the witch. "Your power cannot touch what is true in our hearts," she said, her voice firm despite the fear twisting in her chest. "We will not be afraid of you." The witch's laughter echoed through the clearing, chilling and beautiful. Shadows twisted and surged around them, forming ghostly shapes of the brothers' past pain, betrayals, losses, centuries of sorrow. Kale's father appeared, accusing and cold. Riven's younger self howled in despair. Lior's laughter turned cruel and mocking. The brothers tensed, wolf instincts surfacing, but Ilara stepped forward, holding the relic high. "These are only memories," she said firmly. "They do not control us. We choose who we are now. We choose courage, loyalty, and love." The relic pulsed brighter and the shadows flickered as if uncertain. The witch's form wavered and her voice grew sharper, almost desperate. You cannot undo what has been done. The curse is eternal. Cale moved closer to Alara, his presence strong and protective. Eternal is only a word, he said. We make the choice. Today we decide. Riven and Leor joined him, their hands brushing hers, forming a circle of unity. The forest seemed to respond, the wind rising gently, carrying warmth instead of cold. Light began to radiate from the relic, spreading across the clearing, touching the shadows, softening their edges. Alara felt a surge of energy, pure and powerful, flowing from the relic through her hands, into her heart, and outward into the brothers. She could feel the centuries of pain, the sorrow and guilt, the burdens that had bound them, and she realized that the curse could not stand against their combined courage and trust. The witch screamed, a sound of anger and fear, as her shadows writhed and twisted, trying to resist the light. But it was too late. The energy from the relic intensified, a bright, steady pulse that filled the clearing, driving back darkness. Cale's amber eyes met hers, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of bravery, of loyalty, and of a bond that had grown stronger through trials and fear. He stepped closer, placing his hand lightly on hers over the relic. Together, he said. Riven and Leor mirrored the gesture, completing the circle. The relic's light surged and the shadows shattered like glass, dissipating into the night. The witch's form flickered, twisted, and finally dissolved into the wind, leaving the forest still and quiet, as though it were breathing for the first time in centuries. The brothers staggered slightly, breathing heavy but human once again. Their wolf-like grace lingered in subtle ways, a reminder of the centuries they had endured, but their forms were restored. They looked at Alara, gratitude and awe shining in their eyes. You did it, Kyle said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. Without you, we could not have faced her. Without your courage, the curse would still bind us. Riven's green eyes softened. You have proven yourself beyond measure. You have not only helped us, but reminded us of what it means to be human, to feel, to trust, to hope. Leor's small hand squeezed hers, his blue-gray eyes shining with emotion. You are part of us now, always. Thank you. Alara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she smiled. The fear and tension that had gripped her for days began to ease, replaced by warmth and relief. She had faced the witch, helped break a centuries-old curse, and formed bonds that could not be broken by magic or time. Cale stepped closer, his amber eyes holding a depth of emotion she could not fully name. Alara, he said softly, you have shown strength, courage, and heart beyond anything I imagined. You have changed our lives, and I cannot imagine facing tomorrow without you by my side. Her heart fluttered, and she realized that the bond she felt was more than friendship. It was trust, respect, and something that stirred deep in her chest. I will be by your side, she said quietly, always, if you will have me. Kyle's hand brushed hers, warm and steady. Always, he said simply. Riven smiled, though his usual sharpness was softened by pride. The forest is quiet now, but we must remain vigilant. Evil may rise again, but tonight we celebrate courage, friendship, and the choices we have made. Leor grinned, small and bright. And we have you with us, Alara. That makes everything better. Alara laughed softly, the sound mingling with the night air. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe, at peace, and truly alive. She looked around at the brothers who had become her family, at the snow-blanketed forest, and at the relic that had guided her courage. The darkness had passed, and though the journey had been perilous, they had faced it together, and won. The moonlight glinted on the frost-covered trees, reflecting the warmth that now radiated through their hearts. The storm was gone, the witch defeated, and the curse lifted. Yet as she looked at Cale, she understood that the greatest adventures were not only battles fought in the snow or shadows, they were the bonds formed, the hearts that dared to trust, and the courage to stand together against the impossible. Cale's hand found hers again, a quiet affirmation. This is not the end, he said softly. But with you by our side, I know we can face whatever comes next. Alara smiled, her heart full. Then we face it together, she said. The forest was silent, peaceful for the first time in centuries. Snow glimmered like silver beneath the moonlight, and the brothers and the human who had opened her door to them stood together, ready for whatever the future held. The curse was broken. The witch was gone, And a new story had begun, one of trust, courage, and the enduring power of hearts bound together in the face of darkness. And as the first stars appeared in the clear night sky, Ilara knew, without doubt, that this was only the beginning of a lifetime of courage, love, and shared destiny.